There has never been a more tolerant, more opportunity-filled environment in human history than a college campus. It is filled with the most well-meaning faculty who want all of their students to succeed, in particular, society's traditionally oppressed groups. And yet, students are being encouraged by this growing diversity bureaucracy to think of themselves as victims and to celebrate their victimhood. There is a ruthless competition underway on every college campus today to be the top dog victim. These days, that position, glorified, sought after, is occupied by trans individuals, but that won't last. Anybody who can guess the next top dog victim is more far-seeing than I, but gets the prize, because the students are desperate to find some way to trump the current totem pole of victimhood.
You know, Heather McDonald, isn't there some legitimacy in women's studies, African American studies, to tell those stories in history as well?
I don't think they should be separate disciplines. We tell them all the time. Novels tell the story of women, of blacks, with extraordinary empathy. Huck Finn does. I just read the book Slaves of Solitude, set in post-World War II Britain. Incredible insights into female sexual competitiveness. Of course, we should open our history. We should understand reality in as great and broad a way as possible. But the reality is this, Peter. Those separate studies departments, whether it's Black studies, Chinkantz, Latinx studies, women's studies, they have become grievance factories. They are not about openness. They are about cultivating a very particular mindset, which is one that is at war with the accomplishments of Western civilization.
So when you speak on a college campus, what's your reception?
It's varied. At times, it's been rather hostile, physically so, brute force. Other times, it's merely tense. But other times, students have listened respectfully and asked questions. At the University of Pennsylvania recently, it was a challenging audience, but they were all respectful. There was no interruptions. I was recently at the University of Colorado Boulder, there too. Now that was a mixed audience. There were a lot of people, adults from the community, so they were very receptive to my message. But there was some faculty there that were insulted by the fact that I actually said that there are no bigots at the University of Colorado. This is the very weird thing about our current moment, Peter. There is nothing more insulting you can say to a college administrator than, your institution is filled with good people. There are no bigots there, because they want to say this is a bigoted environment. It is a very perverse situation where you have elite liberal institutions voluntarily embracing the narrative that they discriminate, when this is empirically, demonstrably false. So I was at University of Colorado Boulder, they did a wonderful job inviting me. Nevertheless, for me to say that this is an open-minded institution was seen by some people there as an insult. Go figure.
But what's the advantage to saying it's not an open environment?
That's a fabulous question. If one was starting from scratch, not knowing the whole victim ideology that we live in, it's absolutely puzzling. And yet there is a bureaucracy in every university today, and it's not confined to the elite colleges, it's now trickling down, sadly, even into community colleges, that is invested, its entire well-being is dependent on this idea that there is institutional racism on college campuses. And there are people whose identity, again, if you're doing Black studies, possibly you are reading Ralph Ellison and Du Bois with an ear for just their language and greatness. But the far greater likelihood is what you are telling students is that the Enlightenment itself, which was all about tolerance, is a source of racism and bigotry, which is historically false. But these departments are invested in this narrative that America remains endemically, permanently racist and sexist. This is Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is probably the best paid college speaker today. He is beloved by every college administrator because his message is that the identity of America, not just 200 years ago, but today, is to destroy the black body. And that is a message which colleges perversely welcome and encourage, and they don't want to hear a counter-narrative.
Back to the diversity delusion, you quote Peter Uven, Vice President of Academic Affairs at a Claremont McKenna College in California. I fully understand that people have strong opinions and different, often painful experiences with the issues Heather McDonald discusses. I also understand that words can hurt. Why did you include that in the book?
Well, I guess I wanted to give a full picture of what happened at Claremont McKenna.
What happened?
Which was a blockade, a student blockade of about 250 students that surrounded the auditorium where I was supposed to speak about my previous book, The War on Cops, which simply tries to give voice to the hundreds of people whom I've had the privilege to meet in high crime neighborhoods, whether it's South Central Los Angeles or Central Harlem, who are law-abiding. They want their children to succeed, and they support the cops. They want public order. They want the same freedom from fear that people in other neighborhoods can take for granted. And they say to the cops, why aren't you getting the kids off the street? Why aren't you getting the drug dealers off the corner? So I wanted to give voice to those people, to give an alternative story to the Black Lives Matter narrative. Well, this was viewed as something that was not tolerable, not allowable on Claremont McKenna campus by the students and those from the neighboring Claremont colleges like Pomona, Scripps, and Pitzer, Harvey Mudd. And so hours before I was supposed to speak, students started congregating outside of the auditorium, and it was so, this is just classic of student sort of wallowing in their lachrymose self-pity. Their rule for the blockade was that the black students would be on the inner ring because otherwise they were so at risk from Claremont's feckless police, the Claremont College's feckless police forces, that somehow they'd come in with billy clubs and just would be beating them. So the students believed that my presence there as a racist, sexist, Islamophobe, warphobe, transphobe, I mean, it's the usual litany of substitutions for thought and for engagement, that the fascist McDonald had to be shut down. Well, Peter Uven, one of the deans, was trying to sort of, I don't know, thread the needle and throw them as a sob to say, well, of course, this is somehow threatening rhetoric or makes people feel unsafe, or, you know, which is just ridiculous. We should not be playing into this absurd conceit. There are millions of students abroad in Asia right now, Peter, who are studying night and day for the privilege of attending an American college, this alleged maelstrom of hatred. They're students of color. Why do they want to come here? Because they understand that an American college today offers boundless opportunities. You can read every book that has ever been written. This is something that would have driven the Renaissance humanists mad with envy and desire. And yet these students are being taught to think of themselves as victims. It is educational malpractice.